Hey, beautiful people. My name's Heather. This is the Ankara Book Club. I have another book to share with you. This is a really interesting read. I think I was in some kind of internet rabbit hole and I can't even remember what I was searching. And I came across this book which tweaked my interest. I really love to read biographies or stories about different healers and the way that they have a connection to the divine or to their guides and how that plays out in a particular flavor. And I read this book fairly quickly because it's a really anecdotal read. It's really about her life. And it reads as if it's segmented stories that are translated, which I think just honors that it's translated by someone Western. The book is The Divine and Master Zhang, I hope the pronunciation is, but a lady called Tanya Harter Pierce translated it, and she talks about how she went and saw Master Zhang, and there was nothing particularly wrong with her, but she impressed her so much, also with the idea that she knew Tanya was coming, and she knew that she was about to help her. So I think Tanya was already writing books and got her story out there. Now, this is a story about a healer in China who has gone through a lot of adversity for the things that she can do. Now, the things that she can do are pretty incredible. And the lengths that she goes to prove that, and to prove that she is the real deal and that these things are actually happening. There's a lot of scrutiny in this book. There's a lot of abuse that she's suffered based on her skills, but she did a lot of training, and she did a lot of training in Buddhism, and she has a profound connection with Buddha and a lot of the deities from Buddhism. And I'll let you read it, but the part that I really liked was, and it's similar to some of the shamanic training that I've done or some of the shamans that I've learned under, is from a spiritual perspective, if you want to heal people and take away diseases, and she takes away very big diseases, life-threatening stuff, chronic illness, but it seems like she'll really try and help anyone, from someone that has a cough or a headache to someone who's terminally ill. But when you're dealing with people that are terminally ill, you have to make a negotiation with the spirits or the deities around why you want to save this person's life. And one of my mentors would describe it in the same way. If you're going to do a big ceremony for someone and take away a disease process that is likely to take their life, the idea is that in the spiritual realm, there is order like everything else, and there needs to be balance. So if you're going to save someone's life, which means you're going to change the order of the universe, you're going to change their karmic lines, because part of the reason that they're there is some kind of karmic line that's playing out, then you have to negotiate with the spirits and sometimes give them something to satisfy them. So the shamans talk about, if you want to save someone's life, then the Grim Reaper or the person coming to collect their soul still wants to collect a soul. That's the natural order. You know, they're expecting for that person to pass over, then what are they going to take? And some of my shamanic mentors would say in the olden days, that's why there was so many animal sacrifices, because the shaman would have to put the soul into an animal and then sacrifice the animal so that the Grim Reaper or death or whoever came to collect that soul was still satisfied. But they had to make sure that those ceremonies were done really, really well, because if they weren't done in balance or in accordance to the exchange, then it's really the shaman or the healer that's acting as an intermediate that will be up for the extra part of that exchange. So they don't do that so much anymore, but it's not just, I'm so mighty and powerful, I can make you better. It's really a negotiation with the spiritual realm that says, okay, if I take this away from this person, what am I disturbing and what can happen in the meantime, right? And it's really a negotiation with, I believe that this person is a good person. So she talks about it, and so would my mentors. They talk about, you have to think about whether that person will really accept and be grateful for the service that you're going to provide. Because we know that some people are sick and in dire straits because of the choices that they've made, right? That takes radical responsibility, but I believe in that. If I don't look after myself, if I don't think about my default programming, if I inherit bad habits from my ancestry and I don't do anything about that, and I end up in a disease process, I know that my responsibility would say, well, what have I done over the course of my life for my body to have to create this disease? And are there any karmic lines that say that I should be in dire straits because of whether it's my ancestry, whether I've done bad things? So it's this beautiful reminder, and it is based on Buddhist principles, which are heavily rooted in, if you do good deeds and you're a good human, then your karmic lines should improve or be the best they can possibly be. If you are a bad person, now what, I'm simplifying it, but what they're saying is, if you're not kind to people, if you're outwardly mean, if you're not careful with your words, if you blame and shame and ridicule when you could be searching for compassion and kindness and self-responsibility, then part of that is that you're in a situation which is your own undoing. And she talks about a couple of different times where she didn't want to help people because she knew instantly, well, her intuition knew that they weren't a good person. They might have the potential to be a good person and do more good deeds, but she could see that they were outrightly acting or behaving in a way that was creating their own sickness. And I reviewed a couple of books before that touch on similar themes, particularly around disease processes, because I'm super into psychospiritual disease. That we can create our own disease processes with the way that we talk to ourselves, with the way that we act towards other people, our belief systems. This really adds to the environment in our bodies. So she talks about, if she's going to go and negotiate in the spiritual realm in behalf of someone, she better know that it's worth it, that that person is a good person. They're going to do more good deeds in the world. Otherwise, she seems to take a stance of, I'm not going to help you because you're doing all these things and I can see them, or it's up to the spirits now, I've done what I can. But pretty cool thing is they say that she has X-ray vision, so she can look straight into your body and see all of the disease processes that are in there from a medical perspective. And then she makes medicines, Chinese medicines, out of thin air. So she waves her hands around and then pills and liquids just materialize. And she's had the Chinese government on her, many scientists, and they've all watched her and studied her and say, you know, eventually later on in her life that she is the real deal. And I looked her up. She lives in California at the moment. And I believe you can still go and see her. She does regular trips to China and Hong Kong. And I think for a lot of people that are, you know, quite heavily in the disease process, maybe there's a life-threatening disease, or they're in karmic lines that they really don't understand, she seems to be something that can undo them very quickly. And that's a powerful place to come from. And she's taught a lot of people, she's done a lot of demonstrations, but she has also suffered a lot in her life, mainly by the people around her, particularly in her earlier life. So I love reading these anecdotal stories. I think what she has done is incredible. It speaks to the absolute service of being a healer. And sometimes this spiritual path or the path of being a healer takes a lot from you. She's made a lot of sacrifices, but she is revered, particularly in China. And I really like the understanding of the way that she works, knowing that she's a pure or dedicated conduit, and she's done a lot of spiritual practice and a lot of training, and she's helped thousands of people. And I think that's really, really beautiful. And it's astonishing what she can actually do, but it spoke to me of I don't even know if it's responsibility, but the idea that if we're going to change the natural order of the universe, then we should know what we're doing. And we should always know that there's a balancing force, and it's really the healer or the shaman or the conduit that is up for the backlash if it doesn't go very well. And there's always going to be people that we can't help. And there's always going to be people that aren't ready for that help either. So it's a humbling perspective too. It really comes down to good deeds, compassion, looking after those that you love, and being that compassionate force in the world. And it really speaks to those spiritual implications and those karmic lines. It even goes into, I kind of like that perspective too. A couple of her clients were sick, and she had to say, well, you're sick because you killed that animal with a bad intention 5 years ago, or you did that bad deed 4 years ago and you probably thought it was nothing, but now you've been sick ever since. Even killing a snake or running over something, she says, is powerful enough to create sickness in the body. Sometimes chopping down the wrong trees that were sitting there protecting you from evil forces. You cut down the trees without permission, the evil forces enter your house, and that's why you and your partner are sick or something like that. So I kind of like that old school way of thinking about things. It really leans on the spiritual perspective of diseases and ailments and things, which I'm super into, but there's always a physical, mental, and emotional component too. But if a spiritual healer can undo all of it, then sometimes it does contribute to a belief system that says we are greatly leaving behind that there's a spiritual implication to everything that we do. And there's definitely a spiritual framework for the things we experience, particularly when we think that they're medical or just physical or just scientific. We can also spiritually bypass too much, which is going into that the spirituality is the only reason. I don't believe that's the case, because you can take away someone's disease process, but if they've got the same habits and behaviors and they don't change anything about their life, they're likely to just accumulate the same pattern all over again. So very, very cool book. Translated quite well for an anecdotal story, fascinating to read, very interesting. And if you're in the US and you're curious, or you know someone that's very, very sick, or you yourself are suffering, why don't you look her up and see if you can go and see her, and see what your perspective is. Or please, if you do, reach out to me and let me know. I have reached out to her saying, do you ever come to Australia? Can I see you in Hong Kong? Where can I see you? Just for interest's sake, but I don't want to take up too much of her time either. But if I was really sick and I couldn't solve the problem, then I'd be looking towards a healer like this to help me to understand the spiritual ramifications of where I found myself. So very, very cool book. If you see it out there, or if you want to order a copy, please do let me know how you go. If you love books, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear more from you. Big love. See you soon. Bye.